I get asked all the time, what's harder, being an officer or being enlisted? The answer is complicated, and so let me provide you with some considerations about garrison duties, deployed duties, being the boss versus not being the boss, lifestyle, rank has its privileges, and fun factor. In the interest of full disclosure, I've already made a video about the differences between officers and enlisted and considerations for enlisting or getting a commission. So if you're interested in learning about timeline and educational requirements, commitments, roles and responsibilities, quality of life, and pay, then be sure to watch that video. But for this video, we are going to discuss what's harder. As far as jobs and duties, there is obviously a huge spectrum within the US military. For example, it would be unreasonable to compare an Air Force sergeant who spent his career translating Russian and never deployed one day to a war zone with a Special Forces officer who spent his entire career deploying and training for war. This is like comparing a Girl Scout to a member of the FBI SWAT team. A doctor and a medic in a hospital are going to spend their time in a clinic, sometimes in a fancy clinic in garrison, and sometimes in an improvised clinic when deployed. But either way, their lives are tied to medical duties and inside work. Similarly, a finance officer or a finance NCO, a lawyer or a judge advocate general or a JAG officer or a JAG NCO are going to spend their days with their heads in a book or in a computer. So to standardize this conversation, let's talk about combat arms officers and NCOs or non-commissioned officers. These are tankers, infantrymen, special forces, and we will do so by starting with garrison duties. Garrison is the word we use to describe duties back at your home station. Let me simplify by saying that a junior officer spends 25% of his time doing admin duties and 75% of his time training. This is about as good as it gets. Admin duties include attending intelligence insulting but required briefings like SHARP and EO and gender training. It involves planning training, monitoring the budget, property accountability, writing evaluations, writing awards. The 75% training time is individual training like PT, learning a new weapon, drills at the range. And then comes collective training like live fire training, doing field training exercises, and participating in evaluations and validation exercises. For the mid-grade officer, let's say captains and majors, or 03s to 04s in a leadership or command position, they do 50% admin and 50% doing. 05s and 06s in leadership positions are doing about 75% admin and 25% doing. And staff officers, 03s to 06s in staff positions, do 90% admin work, most of it in garrison, but some of it for a battalion, brigade, or division level field training exercise. For a soldier and team leader in garrison, he spends 10% admin and 90% training. But an NCO, from squad leader to platoon sergeant, will spend about 25% of his time doing admin duties and 75% of his time training. Like a young lieutenant platoon leader, this is about as good as it gets. A first sergeant is like a company commander, so they do 50% admin, 50% doing. Command sergeant majors are like battalion commanders, so they do 75% admin, 25% doing. And heaven forbid an NCO gets stuck on battalion, brigade, or division staff. They will similarly do 90% admin work. Unlike officers who might spend half their career on staff, a lucky NCO only spends 1 or 2 rotations on a staff during their career, and some NCOs never do staff time. So let's do a roll-up. If you're the kind of person who thinks that training, deploying, and field time is harder, then the NCO career is much harder. But if you're like most people who want to jump out of airplanes and shoot guns, then an officer's life is harder in that it requires more staff time and more time being a staff geek. With the exception of staff officers and NCOs at higher headquarters who make plans and enable operations, when members of a combat arms unit are deployed, they finally get to do what they're trained to do. There are a lot of ways to describe this. Some call it trigger time, chopping wood, being operational, doing ops, going on a mission, or being outside the wire. For sure, the soldiers and NCOs will do the most fighting, but junior officers also get to spend a lot of time outside the wire. For the most part, the officer plans and resources the mission, makes tactical decisions during the mission, communicates with higher, and orchestrates the fight. And then they send up collected intel and reports after the mission. I want to highlight that for all of my time in Special Forces, my team sergeant or my sergeant major was just as smart as me, just as capable as me, and understood the big picture just as well as me. But in every country we served in, the locals didn't want to coordinate with the master sergeant or the sergeant major. They wanted to coordinate with the officer. And so I will throw it out there that when deployed, the officer is also the unit's liaison, planner, spokesman, and networker. In my experience, when deployed, the job is harder and more demanding for officers, but more dangerous and physically demanding for enlisted. I used to think that it's better to be an officer than an NCO because the officer is in charge and the NCOs have to follow, do what I say. But the fact is that in the military, there's always someone who outranks you and who directs you. If you have a good boss who looks out for the men, then you are going to have the freedom to do what needs to be done to accomplish the mission. If you have a knucklehead for a boss, then you will have to endure their selfish and treacherous decisions and focus most of your efforts on protecting your men. I see great soldiers and bad leaders so much more in the conventional army than in the special operations community. But every village has an idiot, so don't think that by joining SOF you are going to be free of ambitious or eccentric leaders. Since officers and enlisted are all in the chain of command, it's everyone's responsibility to train and develop their leaders. I honestly think a platoon sergeant has a lot more influence on training and developing a newly arrived platoon leader than a company commander has when trying to set expectations and develop a newly arrived battalion commander. So in some situations, it is better to be an NCO who gets to mold and mentor a lieutenant than a captain who must obey his lieutenant colonel. I remember being a very senior captain in a special operations task force in southern Afghanistan. My partner was a senior CW3 who gave me a lot of mentoring. Every Monday we had a meeting with the SOTF XO, who was a nice guy, but a total wimp and administrative Nazi. The warrant officer, let's call him Bert, refused to let me go and sent a senior SF NCO instead. When I asked him why, Bert said, "As a captain, you will write down everything that is said and do what the major asks of you. But next month, when you get promoted to major, you can argue back and tell him that his ideas are stupid. But until then, let's send Sergeant First Class JJ. He is disagreeable and grumpy and no one likes him. There is no way the XO will give him a lot of extra work." The point of the story is that everyone has a chain of command in the military. Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. Sometimes it's harder to deal with a bad boss as an officer than as an enlisted guy. But most of the time, when you have a bad leader, the NCOs and the men suffer the most. So in this case, being enlisted is harder. Let's jump back to a junior officer being a tactical platoon leader. He does 25% admin and 75% training. Let's convert that 75 and make it 75 units of training, doing, of work. If he has a career like mine, then he will get 2 years of platoon leader time, 1 year of conventional company command, 3 years on a special forces team, and a year of soft company command. The other years he's on staff, and that makes a total of 665 units of work. A soldier, as we said, does 90% for the first 3 years, and then is a squad leader through platoon sergeant who does 75% for 13 years. He finishes off as a first sergeant for 2 years and 3 years on staff. That makes 1,465 units of work. So the officer does 665 and the NCO does 1,465 units of work. But this is just an arbitrary number. Now let's say that these units or these numbers represent missions, airborne operations, dives, long ruck marches, heavy body armor, and/or potentially sprained ankles, sore shoulders and back, busted knees, Purple Hearts. I think you get my point. Some may see this as fun, and these are the people you want in combat arms and special operations. Others see this as hard, and these are the people who would better serve their country from a desk. Rank has its privileges. I joined up as an officer and thought, this is going to be great. Rank has its privileges. And then we went to the field, and I got rained on, and wet, and tired, and slept in terrible places just like my soldiers. But I also had the extra benefit of having to stay up late to plan and pull radio watch at the headquarters. I remember thinking that as a company commander, I would get to enjoy the perks of being the boss and that my first sergeant would run the show. But it seemed like we both stayed late and worked more hours than anyone else. Yes, there were times when I had it easy and really enjoyed life. But for the most part, rank has its privileges is a fallacy. If I were to say that rank has its privileges, the privilege is work and more responsibility. The higher I got in rank, the more difficult the problem sets were, and the harder I had to work to ensure that me and my men were safe and set up for success. I will say that when I went in for services, like to set up a transportation appointment or go to the clinic, I was for sure treated better as a lieutenant colonel than a lieutenant. But similarly, a master sergeant or a sergeant major gets treated better than a private. The takeaway here is that both officers and enlisted will work harder and have more responsibilities as you progress through the ranks. Service is about service, it's not about you, so you better set your mind to working. I want to finish our discussion with fun factor. I'll never forget an experience I had in Afghanistan when I was the Future Operations Officer for the Combined Special Operations Task Force Afghanistan, or CJSOTF. It was about the 20th of December. 2 lieutenant colonels showed up to my office and I was told to ensure that they had computers and access to any of my planning files. They were sent on a last-minute detail to make a special plan and were not allowed to return stateside until their plan was done and approved. These 2 lieutenant colonels were demoralized, depressed, on top of working like dogs as staff officers at Special Operations Command Central, or SOC CENT. They were given a no-notice trip to Afghanistan a few days before the holidays. Their wives and their kids were terribly disappointed. This was the first time I saw a Green Beret with a broken spirit. Being on staff and planning and typing on a computer had crushed these 2 men. I did the best to integrate these 2 men into our team and to make the most of it, but they barely endured the 3 weeks that it took to write and finish their plan. I tell this story to highlight that no one joins special operations to work behind a computer or to be a staff officer, but it is an inevitable certainty that all officers will do their fair share of staff time, and that time is miserable and soul-crushing. Although most NCOs get stuck doing some staff time, they do a year of it, not a decade, and some never do any staff time. So if I had to discuss what is harder when it comes to fun factor, being an officer is harder because it requires more time being a soul-crushing desk jockey and less time being an action guy. Okay, there you have it. A quick discussion about the differences between serving as an officer and service as an enlisted man. Please let me know which one would be a better fit for you in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to join my Life as a Special Operations team, and be sure to forward this to a friend who needs to see it. Life is a special operation. Are you ready for it?